Good morning. Magandang umaga sa kanilang lahat. So in behalf of the Institute for Labor Studies, it is a privilege to present our study on gig economy. And just to give you a brief background, the Institute started studying gig economy in 2019, in which we initially studied platform on how it redefines work and reshape business models. And it was followed in 2020 at the height of the pandemic. We examined the working conditions of our delivery riders. And in 2022, we explore options on how we can extend social protection for the gig economy workers. And this last year in 2023, we were also engaged in another study on gig economy and how it will be governed. What are the policy options? What are the opportunities and challenges if there are presented different policies in terms of them? And the study is a collaboration of two technical divisions in the Institute, the Workers' Welfare Research Division and the Labor and Social Relations Research Division. So as you can see, in 2021, the ILO's World Employment and Social Outlook Report named the Philippines as one of the top suppliers of online labor. And if you could remember, there is a post from the World Economic Forum that the country ranked 7th as a fastest growing remote hubs in the world. And as mentioned before in the opening, we were also recognized as one of the world's fastest growing market for the gig industry, where we ranked 6th, and in 2020, we ranked 1st. And if you think that the gig work phenomenon is present only in developed countries, here in the Philippines, according to World Bank, it is also a popular source of employment in developing countries, as stated in a World Bank report in 2023. So while we observe there are transformations in the world of work, including the emergence of gig economy and the vast opportunities that it has created, there are also narratives that it has adverse impact both on workers and its employers. So in light of this, there are questions arising on what would be the capacity and agility of our existing institutions, laws, and regulatory regimes to effectively respond to these transformations. So from a labor standpoint, one major issue is what would be the appropriate or if it's an effective combination of policy and institutional instruments that would enable our tripartite partners and other stakeholders to take advantage of the opportunities and also manage the risks brought by the emergence of this gig economy. So how should the labor market be governed? This study is qualitative in nature, in which we conducted different key informant interviews and focus group discussions to different groups. And these groups, we categorized it according to government agencies, gig economy companies such as ride sharing and food delivery. In as much as we would like to connect with web-based, like Upwork, Fiverr, it's very hard for us to contact them, and gig workers both in location and web-based freelancers. And we also sought the insights from our employers and business groups representatives. Usually, the starting point of our discussion is between the parties involved in the gig economy, which revolves around two key aspects. Usually, what are the insights on how they define the legal relationship and what are the support needed for this gig economy. And usually, it is determined whether it is a presence or absence of an employer-employee relationship. And we pre-identified the policy options. So it could be retaining the status quo or the factual determination. What if we would amend a law? Or what would we, if we formulate another law to address the governance issues, which it is discussed on the next slides. All discussions groups, we started our discussion on our KI interviews with the different groups. what is their understanding of the of a gig worker? So all discussion groups have a common understanding that a gig worker provides on-demand, they provide part-time, they provide temporary services in a flexible manner. And just like in the previous presentation and so many literatures, generally, parties involved are the gig worker, the digital labor platform, or the client or the customer. And these three, for them, they see digital labor platforms as an intermediary, which provides a market for exchange of goods and services between the workers and its customers. And on a business model perspective, the platforms just facilitates the interaction of a short-term transaction, which also reducing cost and efficiency. And another striking insight is that it connects the demand to supply. Yeah. So to illustrate, if you're familiar with Fiverr, it is known for allowing businesses to connect to freelance talent that can quickly fill their own skill gaps and help them to scale up for the short period of time. And I think all of us has this app, the Grab app. It's for drive and ride sharing or food delivery company. It's one of the most popular and widely recognized gig economy examples. These gig jobs involve transporting passengers or delivering food and other items for customers. Furthermore, all discussion groups have reiterated that we asked them, what is the employment relationship for this type of work arrangement? All discussion groups unanimously reiterated that gig workers are independent contractors. Independent contractors are individuals who are engaged in providing specific services in exchange for a fee, but are not considered to be employees and are not entitled to benefits and protection as a traditional employee. And they often refer to them as freelancers. And if the work is characterized by gig workers, often work in autonomy. They often have the flexibility to choose their own hours, work arrangements, or hired on a specific projects or tasks. And they also, others is they're not bound to any single employer or can they work for multiple clients simultaneously. So this independence offers them autonomy to choose projects that align with their interests and expertise. However, it appears, as mentioned before, one of the central concern is on their legal it appears that the determination of the legal relationship of parties involved in the gig economy is mostly the central concern. However, as we have discussions with the different groups, there are other employment-related concerns raised. From the discussion groups, most of them agreed that the emergence of the economy changes the nature of work, such as how we work, how they earn, and enables the workers to provide services flexibly and work with multiple clients. But they have also underscored that there are some pitfalls like income volatility and the absence of social safety nets associated with traditional form of work, which has led to another critical question of whether the gig workers should be classified as independent contractors or employees without the risk of misclassification. They have also asserted that this discussion must adapt to the evolving work patterns, ensuring that the gig workers' rights are upheld with allowing businesses to respond to changing market conditions without stifling innovation and unintended consequences, such as rising business costs or potential loss of flexibility for workers. And all participants also characterized the gig economy with demand for flexible work arrangements. They have characterized this as a project by project or task by task basis or working for a multiple clients. This has changed the way, they think that this has changed the way that many companies think about hiring and staffing. So there's rise of niche specific platforms in niche specific. For example, one company is looking for creatives. So you can post your skills as a creative. the company could look on your portfolio. And one interesting insight raised during the KAI is that it is like an online marketplace connecting demand and supply. The on-demand nature puts the business model to deliver products and services immediately to the user's orders and enable real-time job matching and job and skill matching. And they have underscored that it also expand their talent pools, both local and international, which can lead to diversity of thought and even round-the-clock services. But as we reap these opportunities, they have also recognized that there are challenges, particularly on our institutional arrangements. We have laws that were primarily designed to protect the interests of traditional employees and do not comprehensively address the unique needs and vulnerabilities of our gig workers. So, for example, the enforcement and dispute resolution, it's all, for now, it's applicable to by an employer-employee relationship. As we have mentioned in the previous presentation on social security, gig workers are often self-employed, so they cover most of their social security. And equally important, key informants also raised that there are lack of government data on gig economy. Information such as demographics, earnings, general industry trends are mostly culled from commissions, surveys, and company-initiated. So, as I have mentioned, the jump-off point of mostly of our discussions is on determination of legal relationship of parties working in the gig economy. So we sought the insights of our stakeholders for each policy option, including its opportunities and challenges. First option, what if we retain the status quo? Currently, the practice of determining employment relationship is based on the questions of facts using our test. And one key discussion for workers by default, this is for them, employment relationship should be presumed as workers. One discussion point in this policy option arise is that the idea is that there's no meaningful distinction between an employee and a worker because it often revolves around the notion that both terms essentially refers to individuals who perform tasks or provide services in exchange of compensation. So for the workers group, there's no meaningful distinction between an employee and a worker. Second option, what if we have a gig worker? We recognize them as employees. Most of discussion groups sees this law or this measure, which provides a presumption of employment, is restrictive rather than proactive. For them, it is very hard to implement since work is bound by short-term contracts and gig workers are flexible and work for multiple clients. But as we said, this is very favorable for the workers group. By default, employment relationship should be presumed as workers. But one interesting key discussion is that this proposal would entitle gig workers to legal protections such as minimum wage. However, for the business model, they see this as a threatening the business model. Third is, what if we have recognizing gig workers, maybe both employees and independent contractors at the same time? Most of the discussion group sees this, it will just create confusion because it will dilute the essence of a freelancer, particularly in terms of freedom to do work flexibly, while how we will complete tasks at their own expense or working for multiple clients. One key discussion point that we have it underscored is there is a necessity to differentiate an employee and independent contractor since the current laws treat them differently. Obviously, if clarity exists, all parties understood and work through their rights and responsibilities. What if fourth is, during the discussion, we have introduced and mentioned that there are bills pending in the House and Senate pushing for the protection of freelancers and delivery riders. And all interviewees, all of our informants have have agreed that the intent of these bills is to provide protection, and they agree that the labor standards must be granted to everyone regardless of the type of job they engage, as mandated by our Constitution, to be given to all workers. So it opened also a discussion, and one of the highlights is, how about we develop a model contract or a contract template to help clarify the rights and obligations of the parties and to facilitate also the enforcement in case of non-compliance and dispute. Another insight that underscored during the discussion is, what if we have a code of practice? A code of practice also emerges as a way of self-regulation or a voluntary compliance regime with voluntary standards that could be considered as an alternative tool to mandatory regulation. However, there is also a caution that this policy might create a notion of creating a particular class of workers. Fifth is related to a notion of creating a particular class of workers. We also asked their insight. What if we develop a specific category of worker for gig workers? All key informants, they said that this is very helpful, but the criteria and basis to be categorized under this specific category, fit for a gig worker, must be defined. It means we need data or accurate data. But what information do we need? How we define a gig worker, how many of them, what type of jobs they are doing, and how flexible is their schedule? So collection and analysis of this data is very essential to understand the trends, the challenges, and even the market dynamics for informed policy making. And in terms of another policy option is, how about undertaking administrative reforms, especially on dispute resolutions. But one insight that called from this particular session is that the labor code as its enabling flaw must be reviewed. So there are relevant provisions in the labor code that may be modified or reviewed in terms of mediation and conciliation, in terms of mandatory conciliation endorsement cases, and even the jurisdiction of voluntary arbitration over labor disputes. And even the SENA issuance of DOL, it was also recommended to be reviewed. And 7 is, how about extending social protection to gig workers? So in reference, one concept that arises in this discussion is the concept of portable benefits. Since gig workers, they see that since gig workers often have opportunity to work with multiple clients or move from one job, client or platform, workers' benefits should not be tied to any particular job or company. Meaning, they said the worker owns their own benefits. So in reference to the previous slide, which is undertaking administrative reforms and extending social protection, one key discussion point is there is a necessity to extend labor market regulations to everyone. Yeah. So in this slide, we have observed that regulating the gig economy is very complex and necessitates broader frameworks. And it should address the heterogeneity of the workers, since many are location-based, there are some are web-based, and tailored to their unique needs and regardless of their employment relationship, but also to find a nuanced approach between promoting innovation and safeguarding the rights of our workers. So in reference to the parties involved in the gig economy, we see that for the gig workers, obviously, there's a need to establish a criteria to avoid misclassification and providing them resources and education to help understand their rights and navigate the gig economy and advocate their interests effectively. For the platforms, there's a need to ensure that ethical practice and as a business operation, they could still operate with ease of doing business, and that would not entail them additional cost. And how they would optimally maximize the digitalization in e-commerce. So how could they maximize the economic opportunities brought by digitalization? And for clients and customers, we see that one area is in customer protection. So in this study, sorry, it's simple, but we see that the based on the insights of the various groups, there's a need for a holistic look on how gig work should be governed, but it also needs a support framework. Regulating the gig economy is complex and, as I have said, necessitates broader framework. And for policy recommendations for this study, we know that the legislation is at the maximum maximum spectrum it would entail time. But we would like to underscore the low-hanging fruits which can offer positive opportunities for parties involved in the gig economy. First is there should, if we would like to expand enforcement and dispute resolution functions, first we need to assess existing labor dispute resolution mechanisms to effectively cater to these workers, especially in these non-standard forms of employment. So we could look on the Article 224 of mediation and conciliation. So these are the relevant provisions of the labor code which could be looked upon. Second is a tripartite or advisory council or technical working group composed of concerned government agencies and labor groups, which can serve as consultative and advisory mechanism that will help defining the nature of work, applicable standards in terms of employment, and identify the necessary social protection needed for this type of work. Through this tripartite group, we have now the voluntary code of practice, which could be an initial step towards self-regulation in the absence of a regulation. 3 is, as we all mentioned, raise awareness about the benefits and challenges of the gig economy to guide our potential workers and students in making informed decisions. So raising awareness, how could we raise awareness? The department has the LEAS, or the Labor and Employment Education System, services rather. We could incorporate new forms of work like the gig economy as one of its topics on modules, and the Labor Education Act. It can also help our students to understand the good, the challenges, and the future of the gig economy to make them informed decisions about if and when they would want to participate in this kind of work. And good policy, such as having a clear definition of platform work, requires good evidence. So to capture the size and contribution of the gig economy, it necessitates a reliable source of data and indicators are needed. So the gig economy thrives on innovation and adaptation. To stay relevant and competitive, gig workers must continuously update their skills. So constant skills development is crucial for gig workers to remain competitive in a rapidly evolving job market. And finally, on a gender lens perspective, mapping the gig economy from a gender lens is also enable us to understand the different models that exist and the implication of the same for women workers, since this type of work promises flexibility and autonomy. So has the gig economy create new opportunities for gender equality? We can, at the same time, it can also reinforce gender stereotypes. So at the gender disaggregate data is also required as a initial step, is required to understand the scope and size of the platform economy and ensure that both men and women have an access to social protection. So I think that is my last slide. Thank you very much, and thank you for listening.